Welcome, everybody, to a special series of recap videos that are going to be filmed from my chess tournament here in the National Open. I'm recording this on my laptop, so I've got a different camera. I'm on 30 FPS, if even that, and the overlay is a little bit messed up. But round one is complete. It's currently 11 o'clock at night here, which is no different than me recording any normal video. And I got my first round pairing, and I was put... Actually, they put me on one of the broadcast boards. They were nice to me. And then the broadcast board broke. So some of you weren't able to follow the games live. My first round opponent was Griffin McConnell. He's from Colorado. I believe he's like 15, 16 years old. And when I looked at his database and my preparation process early, I noticed that he was a big Caro-Kann player. And I actually really wanted to enter the Caro-Kann. I would be very happy to play the Caro-Kann with the white side. But then I was like, I got to the board. I was like, you know what? Let's play c4. I've been looking at some c4 ideas back home. c4, d4. I didn't know what he was going to do on d4, so I just wanted to get just one game in with the move c4. And he played e5, which is not a move that I looked in the database that he had played whatsoever. And just one more thing, his ELO, his international rating is 1820, but he's about 2,000 USCF. So, and his blitz rating on chess.com just hit a peak like 2 weeks ago, like 2,300 blitz. So getting better, just doesn't play a lot. And so c4, e5 is a big theoretical battleground. I can develop with knight c3 and knight f3, which is one of the main lines. I was thinking to actually play g3 and bishop g2, get experience in that. But I played the third main option here, which is knight to f3, basically baiting this pawn forward and kind of playing this reverse Nimzowitsch Sicilian, or in the case that they don't do that, which is what he did in the game, I don't go back to the four knights English, I just play d4 right away. And this gives the position a really unique feel. So takes, knight f6, and my only experience up until this moment was that I knew this was fine for black, and after takes, you basically make black damage the structure, and then you play g3, and you play bishop g2 in castles. And this is where all of my preparation went out the window. I no longer knew anything about the theory. I was like, we're just going to have to play a game of chess. And that's that. So he thought for a little bit, d5 is an option here. He played the move bishop to b4 check. And I was mentally preparing that on this move, normally in my blitz games, I've played bishop to d2, just very naturally trading the bishops. But this is a long classical game, and bishop d2 is a relatively dry move. So I played knight d2, which is a little bit more confrontational, in the sense that you block the check with the knight, and you're going to kick this bishop out. And so whatever will happen, you'll either win time on the bishop or get the two bishops versus bishop-knight position. So I'm just looking for some sort of imbalance, even though it kind of delays my development. And normally here, black just castles and tries to put a rook on the center line, play d5, and he played queen e7. And I was very perplexed by queen e7. I was like, why did he go there? So at first I was like, he's trying to go here? Like, I can't take, right? And he's attacking my rook. But I mean, I'm just going to go bishop g2. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I saw no threat. Then he showed me his point. He played bishop a6. And here was the idea. First of all, he's setting up some sort of long castles. And second of all, he's got a line of attack on e2. And basically, he's just threatening to take this. If he had just played bishop to a6 in this position, I would have forked his bishops. And I wouldn't have won them because he can take my knight, but he makes no progress. So by doing this first, I now have a problem. And here I was actually just thinking to go b3. But I realized in my head that if I play the move b3, that I thought that he could play here. And this is quite unpleasant for me, because I'm still pinned, so I have no fight for this. And he's threatening to come in here. And I said, you know what? I got to play this like Dubov. I got to play this like Alpha Zero. I got to play castles. And the point is that he can go takes, and I will take with my queen and give him this pawn. But what do we know about computers in the modern day era? They love the bishop pair, and they love space advantages, and they love pawn target weaknesses, like this isolated weakness that they can just target. And so here, I've got two options. I've got option number one, which is just kick the bishop out, and it'll go anywhere. Let's say it goes here. And then I just play bishop b2, and e4, f4, and I very slowly dominate the center space. Even though I'm down a pawn, it's not felt whatsoever. And I had a feeling that the engine would tell me after the game was over that this is what it liked. And it was true. And I knew it during the game, and I really, really wanted to play it. But I couldn't break away from my, humanity. And instead, I just got the pawn back right away by playing the move queen f4. And the way this wins the pawn back is that it attacks the bishop and the pawn. And, you know, my opponent can't do this because this is just, you're never getting out of this. You're never getting out of this. And what's funny is that I thought queen e2 was far too dangerous, but the computer tries to tell me that, oh, you can actually do this. You know, you can't, there's no rook e1 because queen takes and the bishop is guard. This just looks idiotic, but the computer on low depth was trying to convince me that this was good, but, you know, it's like the crazy person on the street at the gas station trying to give you drugs. Just ignore it. Queen e2, no good. Bishop a6 back, and I took the pawn, and he castled. Okay, what do we have? A position with queen, knight, and bishop kind of out, and I have the two bishops. And we obviously both have two rooks. So white is better here. Why is white better? No weaknesses, basically. I mean, e2 is a lot less of a weakness for if the bishop is going to take, because I'll pin. It's a lot more of a weakness if the queen takes now. That's a different story because the king's out of the middle. My opponent's got a really bad pawn structure. A pretty big target here on a6 for my queen to come back. And I mean, I have more space. I have more activity with my bishop pair. This knight isn't really intimidating anybody. But here I spent 30 minutes of time. And I very quickly started realizing I don't actually like my position that much. And what normally 30 minutes of thought goes into is you have a candidate idea and you cannot make it work. And so my first idea here was just to play very calm move rook e1. Defend my pawn, and then figure it out. Queen a5, etc., etc. But then in my head, I was like, you know what? I don't like queen b4. This move looks a little bit unpleasant. My rook is under attack, and I'm going to develop, threatening to damage the structure, and, you know, my rook is going to protect this rook. But then there's queen b2, and that guards this, so I don't actually... Yeah, I was looking at this position, I was like, okay, I'm down a pawn. I mean, they can't take this, because I go here, but I'm like, what am I achieving in this position? Of course, computer finds some way to make this work for white, but I spent a long time, and I was like, you know what about... My opponent doesn't even have to play queen b4. There's this knight d5 move. And yes, I can take and damage the structure. This is an awful structure, but at the end of the day, we have the opposite colored bishops. And if my opponent just finds a way to stabilize this, I'm not going to be able to win the game. I can win a pawn, but it's still going to be a long-term draw. And I was really struggling to make this work. I even saw one completely insane variation where I play queen a5 and attack the bishop. But there's queen b4. And if I trade, I'm not happy. If I take the bishop, I hang my rook, so I have this tricky move. And after takes, and like rook b8, b3, I thought I was only a little bit better. And the computer says plus 1.7. So the computer sees this endgame and just sees it deep into the future and thinks that white is just very easily winning due to black's very bad pawn structure in the center of the board and the bishop pair. And the fact that, you know, again, once I move this pawn, this bishop has no targets. I have a better pawn structure, more space, bishop pair, etc., etc. So I misevaluated the position. I was spending a lot of time, and then I ended up playing the move bishop to g5. And the point of this was I wanted him to play h6. I thought he was going to. I would take. He would take. I would win both pawns and try to save one of these because they're both under fire. So I was hoping to save one of my pawns, win both of his pawns, and target his final weakness. This was my game plan here. And it was wrong. It was wrong because I misevaluated something a couple of moves earlier. But here he kind of shocked me and played the move rook c8, which is just not a very good move. It's not a very good move because I played queen a5. And, by the way, you might be hearing a fan. It's my laptop fan. I'm sorry if you hear it. And the problem for him now is that if he takes here, I pin him, and this is his other option. So I've given him a pawn, but now I'm going to play takes and takes. And this is awful for black. Black has just 3 total island pawns. Meanwhile, I just have 2 blocks. I have 2 and 3. Right? And these 2 pawns are together, but look at the rooks. Because this rook had to move, because if you go back a couple moves, that rook had to move, because otherwise I would have taken the a pawn. Shows you how delicate black's position really is. I'm just much better here. And I kicked out the queen, and the queen actually has to stay guarding the bishop, so he goes here. And here for the second time during this game, I knew what the computer would want to play, and I didn't do it. I didn't do it because I stuck to my guns as a human being. So, of course, I shouldn't trade queens. You know, I should move my queen and target him or something. Sorry, I shouldn't trade queens. I should go here and attack this. And I knew here the best move for a fact was this move, queen to a3. Not attacking anything just yet, but threatening bishop f1. And it's such a nasty threat. You have to move the queen or the bishop. The best move here is probably just sliding back. But by forcing the queen one square backwards, I've removed it from this diagonal and access over here. I kill the queen's activity, and then and only then do I play queen c3. And the queen has been kicked off of an active square. This diagonal is not something you want to fight for, and the queen has nowhere to come back that way. And I had a feeling I should play queen a3. But queen c3 is what I chose, and I chose it quickly because I was already spending too much time. And you only get your bonus time on move 40. So I played queen c3, which attacks the pawn. He played a nice move here. He didn't hang on to his pawn. He played the best move. Sometimes you need to not defend things. You need to be active. So he plays this active rook move. I don't trade. When you have a situation like this, when your rooks are tense, you don't trade because you don't want to surrender control of the file. I took the pawn, and he played here. And here I'm much, much better. It's just about finding the way forward. I'm much better because, again, I've won my pawn back, and the pawns are super split. And then I immediately did something stupid. So in this position, I was considering a wild variation that begins with the move bishop to e4. And the idea of this move is that if he were to play rook e6, attacking my queen and trying to double, I would play bishop takes h7, king takes, queen takes, take the rook, give him a check to bait him to walk forward so that my rook can come and attack. And I got this far in my head, and I was like, I'm winning. And then I realized that he can play bishop c8, killing my dreams, because somehow I don't have a check. I can't check him anywhere. And that's going to give him all the time he needs. If I play a move like queen e8, paralyzing him, he plays the only move again, sacrificing his rook, but attacking mine. And I saw this, and I thought about it, and I was like, I can't believe that doesn't work. So then I just played h4, right? I mean, when you don't know what to do. h4, get my king out. Also, h5, h6 is an idea. And then I realized here that he can just play rook e6 all the same. It's actually funny. I just forgot that he can still do this. Luckily, I'm fine. And I had to take a deep breath here, and I realized that I made a small inaccuracy. I took, and I realized he wanted to take with this pawn, and he took with this pawn so his pawns could be all together, and rook f8, and he's improved his pawn structure, but not really, because these pawns are still very difficult to move. Anything you move, you weaken something else. And let's not forget, he's got isolated flank pawns. So I've got clumps together, which are always going to be nice. So I played rook d1 attacking his weak pawn. He can't move it. I knew he had to go here, and here, folks, sometimes the simplest thing to do is to trade the pieces. And I calculated that after queen to d4 and this trade, he has 5 ways of protecting this pawn, and none of them are good. If he plays rook f7, I go here and I win the a-pawn, which shows you, again, the problem of all of his pawn structure. If rook d8, then I take here, and he can't take me because of the pin. If he plays bishop back to c8, then I go rook a4, and I play bishop f1, and I will win this pawn all the same, although bishop c8 is actually the best move. He can also play rook b8, counterattacking me, but that loses everything. It loses this. It's very bad. And last but not least, the move he played in the game, which was this. And here I realized something funny, and this is actually why you should study your endgames. Yes, I can continue with my plan, but I realized that I have a better move. I can actually give him a tickle check. And a check like this basically forces a very difficult decision out of him. Does he go to the corner and give me the same exact position, but with a more passive king by 1 whole square, which is a lot? Or does he do what he does in the game and go here? But now the problem is this comes with a check. Do you see what I did? I baited his king to come forward, and now I'm going to go target this. And I realized from a few moves out that this is also very delicate, and we just go rook c7. And at the end of all of this plan, this whole plan to bait his king out here, I calculated 1 move further than him. He goes for counterplay, and we both take pawns. But because I forced his king out here, and he defended this pawn, I have bishop takes d5. And I saw that from a few moves out. I actually saw that when I gave him this check. That if his king was to come forward the way it did, like this, and he thinks, oh, I'm guarding my h7 pawn, I'm going to go get this. And while he goes there, I'm going to go here. And by the way, now this move h4 is very useful because his bishop and his rook are trying to attack my king, and I have a getaway. It's actually funny how that move h4 wasn't so stupid after all. I pick up a couple of pawns, and here he trades into a rook endgame, and this would be a draw if I had 1 less pawn. But because it's 3-on-1, Very easy to win this. So you just got to improve your position very slowly. I targeted his pawn, trying to make it come forward and be weak, but then he backed up with his king and I checked him. And he has a tough choice. Does he come forward and basically just trap his king? Or does he go back and get cut off? So this is laterally cutting off his king, and now I just very slowly advance my pawns. It's very important that you advance the flank pawn, so you isolate that pawn as passively as possible, like this, actually, like this. This is very important. And your king and pawn make a barrier for that king, and now the rest of the game will be decided by just infiltrating with the pawns. And I played g4, and he resigned. And he resigned because, like, if he just tries to hang on, something like this, I'm just going to bring my king. He can give me some checks. It really doesn't matter. And again, like, you know, just say he just keeps moving. At some point, I'm going to play rook b7 and force him to the back rank. But there's one more way to win this. I will just show it to you. It's like this. And you play g6. And you just basically break through and make a queen. So I played g4 and he resigned. And pretty honestly smooth sailing. I was quite happy with this game. Got to try something new out. That's always fun. I've never had this over the board before. I've had this like 5 times in Blitz and usually against some 2700 GM. So it was kind of nice to get it not against the 2700 GM. And again, I hope some of what I'm kind of showing here gives you an insight into my thought process, my decision making, sacrificing a pawn for activity, this kind of very long-term compensation versus immediately winning my material back. And yeah, very tough decision here that I had to make. Deep 5-6 moves, deep branches of analysis and evaluation and coming back and making a decision, and a slight inaccuracy. In this position, actually, I should have stuck with my gut and played rook e1, which is actually the move. I almost played this move in 2 seconds. Just rook e1 and play, but I don't know. I just kind of started doubting myself. I was like, oh my god, queen b4, what have I allowed? And it turns out that, you know, this endgame is just much better for me, and I kind of hesitated and I overthought it. And oftentimes in chess, when you spend 30 minutes, when you have 70 minutes on the clock, you're going to play something bad. And I played something inaccurate, and he could have and probably should have immediately asked the question here, what are you doing? But he kind of trusted me, and it's a good lesson for him as well. You know, don't just trust your opponent. I mean, bishop g5 gets played. Ask your opponent for a concrete decision. But that was round 1, folks. It's quite late here. I'm gonna eat a snack and probably go to sleep. But I'm gonna upload this immediately, and hopefully the rest of the games that I play will get broadcasted. But yeah, follow the tournament at Follow Chess or any of the other major chess websites. Vegas Chess Festival, I think, is the domain. And yeah. How do I usually end these recaps? I'm in a hotel room, so I'm kind of out of my element. Take care. I'll see you in round 2. Get out of here. Is that usually what I do? I think that's what I do. I'll see you in round 2.